Hello and welcome to another video review. This is Rainbow Six Lockdown for PC, Xbox, GameCube, and PlayStation 2. This is the fourth game in the Rainbow Six franchise, and it followed what is generally considered either the best or the second best game in the entire series, which is Rainbow Six 3 Raven Shield. And it was also the first Rainbow Six game to be released primarily as a console game. That's pretty obvious from both the fact that it was released on consoles first in September of 2005, and then later in February of 2006 on PC. But not only that, but the style of gameplay seems to suit consoles a lot better. The control scheme has been altered quite a bit. The gameplay is a considerable departure from the previous Rainbow Six games, and they also removed a few features from the console version when they ported it to PC, but put in a few other things that weren't necessarily wanted nor really well received. Now, the visual department leaves a lot to be desired. While it doesn't look bad by any means, the textures are decent res. Most of the characters look fine. The modeling is actually pretty good in general. Third-person animations are pretty decent. But it's the first-person animations that really bother me in this regard, because they're a considerable departure from the previous game in the series, where they weren't slow and methodical. They're ridiculously fast. I mean, way faster than anything we even see in today's animations. And they don't look very tactical. On top of that, the weapon takes up a tiny portion of the screen, and it waggles around a lot when you're moving. And it looks like Bad Company 2 when it does that, where it's just that ridiculous shaking of the weapon like you've never actually held a weapon before. It looks really stupid. Because, I mean, Rainbow is supposed to be the elite of the elite. They're supposed to be the world's best counterterrorism unit, basically. They're not supposed to be some cowboy shooting from the hip. And that's another thing. When you go into Iron Sight mode, it's a 2D sprite overlay. And after having previous games to this game, I mean, even earlier than this, Call of Duty in 2003 had 3D Iron Sights, but this doesn't. And it looks really weird. The Iron Sights themselves become absolutely gigantic when you zoom in. And they shake around a lot when you're firing, too, so it looks really weird as well. The only weapons to have 3D Iron Sights are the pistols. And I think that's a little odd, but it works. It's just the Iron Sights themselves are a little awkward to use because they're so big you kind of have a hard time figuring out where to aim. Then there's the sound department, which is also leaving a lot to be desired. The voice acting is bad. It's just bad. Characters' deliveries are very flat. They have basically no emotion. They did at least get the accents right for certain characters. Like, if they're supposed to sound German, they at least sound relatively German. If they're supposed to sound French, they sound somewhat French. I mean, that sort of thing. But in general, the voice acting is just really, really pathetic. When you're going through the game, you'll hear them say things, and it sounds like a very low-budget, cheesy 70s action movie. And it's like, what's going on here? So, the voice acting is a really big detriment. The gun sounds, a lot of them are reused from Raven Shield, which is fine, because those were perfectly fine. But the new ones are just kind of there. They don't really add any oomph. In fact, most of the sound effects themselves have basically no oomph to them. They really have no immersion factor whatsoever. They just do their job, and that's kind of it. Then there's the music. It's weird because they went for a lot more intense, action-y music, and they threw in some basically bombastic stuff that you really don't associate with Rainbow Six. So it really is kind of jarring and doesn't fit the game very well. At least it doesn't fit the Rainbow Six series very well. Now, the basic storyline has Rainbow going up against this terrorist organization called, I believe, the Global Liberation Front. And they've gotten a hold of this man-made nanotech virus called Legion, and it's got a 100% mortality rate, causes massive hemorrhaging, and that's the basic storyline throughout the entire thing. And one of the big things about this game is that they're like, oh, well, they have one of your own, and you need to go rescue him. And that goes nowhere. It really does. I mean, the plot itself is just garbage. And what that did with the plot meant that the game became extremely linear. You can pretty much not plan out anything anymore. It's all context-sensitive commands. There is no planning screen anymore. There's really hardly any tactical element to this game at all. In fact, you can actually leave your team at the very beginning of the level, go the entire level solo, just firing from the hip. You don't even have to aim. You can just fire from the hip, because you're actually more accurate firing from the hip with the crosshair than you are aiming down the sights, because it's a lot easier to aim when you're just pointing in their general direction and shooting. And that should not happen. Another thing they did was they made the pistols have infinite ammo. Basically, you have to reload them, but they never run out of extra magazines. And that's another thing where they kind of screwed up as well, because since they've done that, it's more economical just to ditch your primary weapon and go in with your pistol the entire time, because you will not be penalized for it. It's not like you're gonna run in and find yourself massively outgunned, because the AI is just completely retarded. Enemy AI consists of, oh look, there's Rainbow, I'm going to crouch in the middle of the open street and sort of fire at them blindly. It's really, really pathetic. And your teammates have the same syndrome that they've had for the past Rainbow Six games, only a lot worse. They're even more retarded. They will do exactly the same thing as the enemy AI does. They will stand in the middle of the open and just get shot to pieces, and it's no big deal for them. And the thing is, the game doesn't penalize you for them dying either. So it's like, what's the point of having the team if you can do the entire thing solo? Just go in and Rambo the whole thing. Because that's really all you have to do. You can go in and Rambo the entire thing. You don't have to really play tactically at all. It's really a run-and-gun arcade shooter. It is not a tactical shooter. And that is what alienated so many fans from this game. So how does it stack up as an arcade shooter? It's bad. It's really bad. The shooter mechanic just feels flimsy. There's nothing particularly wrong with it. It's just when your AI is so completely retarded and pretty much everything is a 1 or 2 shot kill, it's not like you're going to really care about the shooter mechanic. You're just going to be like, this is boring. They've simplified the mechanics dramatically. They've reduced the controls to basically a handful of stuff, basically what you can fit on a controller. And I get the feeling this game actually plays better on consoles. But it was weird going into multiplayer, because I have the PC version. And I didn't expect to go into multiplayer and be able to create my own character, which, I mean, I knew I could create my own character. But you can only use it for multiplayer, and you can actually play multiplayer solo, which is kind of weird, but anyway. And if you create your own character, the textures for the created characters are basically what the game looks like on the lowest possible settings, no matter what your graphics settings are. If your graphics are absolutely maxed, then they look like they're on the low setting. It's really awful. They have extremely low-res textures. It looks just nasty, really. And it's weird because you can play as other characters that in the single-player campaign, you can only play as Ding Chavez. And if you go as the other characters in the multiplayer, or the terrorist hunt mode, then actually you'll see that their hands change, and the texture is massively lower res. There's nowhere near any amount of the detail that you get with Ding's character. So they were extremely lazy with this game. They just, I don't know what they were really thinking with it. The shooter mechanic falls flat. The tactical elements are completely broken and completely useless. The AI is completely retarded. The multiplayer is average at best. The equipment selection is pretty poor. For some reason, they've ditched the whole realism route and gone with, hey, we're going to put a bunch of really weird prototype weapons in here, and that's going to be Rainbow's arsenal this time. No, they use actual fielded weapons that are proven effective, not prototypes. Anyway, overall, Rainbow Six Lockdown is a terrible game. It's very playable at least, but there's no fun to be had here unless you're really, really, really into extremely easy shooters that are just absolutely pathetic on the AI. But there's no fun to be had here. It's still playable, though. It's a 2 out of 5. Thanks for watching.